Hey, I just wanted to make a couple videos for Walnut Grove sound techs and anyone else who's interested in how the ME-1 monitors actually work. I thought I'd go over this mostly for troubleshooting if anything goes wrong, just to understand what the board is doing and then what happens on the individual ME-1s themselves. So knowing that difference is really helpful if you have a problem and you need to troubleshoot somehow. So let me go over how the ME-1s are patched. And this, again, this is nothing that ever needs to be changed except for when we do out of the ordinary things, like adding totally different channels than we're used to, doing more things in stereo than we're used to, any of that kind of stuff. But for normal scenes, most Sunday mornings, all the ministries that we have regularly, this never has to get touched. This is set to all those scenes to work really well. But here is what's going on behind the scenes for ME-1s. If I push the I/O button, that shows me all the different patch bays. There's all sorts of different patch bays I can look at here. So I see I'm looking at outputs, which is good. To look at the MEs, I have to be on output, and I have to have mix rack selected. So the ME-1 sources aren't being built inside this surface, they're being built in the mix rack that lives in the amp rack. So I'm on mix rack, which is good, and one of the outputs is called ME. And what that corresponds to actually is the mix rack has a network output, a Cat5 output on it called ME. And one cable comes out of that and goes into a power over Ethernet switch. And that switch that's also in the rack is what's feeding all the ME inputs on the stage. So it all comes down to one port out of the mix rack, and everything else is just a copy of that. The reason I'm emphasizing that is it just can't happen that a voice is making it to one ME but not another one. It can't happen that any source is making it to some MEs but not all of them, because they're all just copies of the same thing, and it's a digital signal. It's not like some pairs of the Ethernet cable are carrying some of the channels and some are carrying others. If you're getting one channel and its name, you should be getting all of them. If you plug in an ME and an ME-1 and you're not getting channel names, it just says channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, something's really fishy. Or if it's not powering up, something's getting fishy, because that Cat5 should be giving it power and all the channels with all the names. If a channel isn't showing up on the key you expect on the ME-1, that's a whole different ballgame. But this one patch bay is feeding all the different ME-1s. So whatever's going on here is dictating everything. Let me zoom out to the point of it being useless, because I can't see anything. But here is the big picture. These are the sources that are actually feeding the ME-1s. Horizontally over the top, you've got the ME outputs, and there's 40 of them. So each ME-1 is getting fed these 40 audio sources. And this patch bay tells it which 40 channels to choose from. You'll see for the most part, it's a one-to-one patch, and then there's some gaps. Let me show some more detail. These with blue squares mean that it's treating these two as stereo pairs. And I can assign I'll go to some unused ones here. So these highlighted ones are not used. And if I click on that, it'll say, do you want a stereo link with its neighbor? And it will tell me that yes, 33, 34, I haven't even patched anything to them, but when I do, they're going to be a stereo pair and they become blue. And if I click that again, it undoes that link and they're not blue. So what does that actually mean? Well, I've got all the drums are the first channel strips. These are channel numbers, not physical socket numbers. These are channel numbers, input numbers as the board calls them. So channel 1 is kick, channel 2 is snare, all the way down. So I'm one-to-one patched with some stereo sources here. 7 and 8 are overheads. They are a stereo pair, and the ME-1 treats it as a stereo pair. 9 and 10 are the pad, which is a drum pad stereo channel. and 11 and 12 are the tracks. They are stereo channels. And what do we have over here? Keys, probably. Yep, keys is a stereo pair, 17 and 18. And those were just selected by selecting them there. We've got some unused channels at the end. And when we run out here, I'm picking up click over here is on 31. That's the last one. We've got some empties, and anything that's not on this list, these are direct outs of channels. We also have some mix outs. I have the talkback mix, which is a mono auxiliary send that has the talkback mic, as well as some of both handhelds and lapel mics and some background music, I think. We've got all sorts of things, and ClearCom program. We've got all sorts of things on this talkback aux send. So that's going to one channel as a mix. And in effects world, I'm sending the fourth effects return, which is vocal reverb, to another two of these that are ganged together to be a left and right pair. So mostly we've got direct channel outs in our 40 sources. We have effects returns for just vocal reverb, and we have this talkback mix out, and I think that's the only one of the mixes. Yeah. So those are the 40 sources. And if I had, so when we had the memorial here with 2 electric guitarists who each wanted stereo electric guitar, I had to assign new channels and link them together to be stereo, and kind of build that and send that all out to the MEs. But so this is the main map that sends out 40 sources into the MEs. Now what you do with those 40 sources and how you get them to different buttons is something you do on each ME-1 separately. So this is the map that sends them all. So for example, one more thing, these vocals. Right now they're named from this past weekend, but this is normally lead vocal, BGV 1, 2, and 3. So those are being sent to the ME-1s all the time. All these are being sent all the time. We've got this mishmash of spare channels. We can keep changing their names. It doesn't matter. As long as it's on this list of channel numbers, it's going to make its way there. Right? So these channel numbers, these green ones here right after keys, are all making their way to the ME-1s somehow. And then I'll do another video to show you what we actually do with them on the other end. But this is the patch bay sending out. Just to reiterate again, so anything on this ME-1 list, all these 40 sources are coming out of the mix rack on the ME Cat5 output, and then that goes into a power over Ethernet switch that is in the same amp rack, and that makes copies, and all those copies go to the stage boxes on stage. So each one of the ME inputs on the stage, or outputs on the stage, the Cat5 outs that say ME on them, they're all getting the same thing. They're never going to be different from each other at that point. What is different is what happens on the ME-1 itself, and we'll look at that next.